Welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Alan Lowenthal. Mr. Lowenthal is a member of the United States Congress. And sir, I want to speak with you about one of your colleagues. His name is Eric Cantor.
Yes.
He is the #2 Republican in the Congress. It's known as the Majority Leader, representing Richmond and surrounding areas in what can only be described as one of the biggest upsets of the last 3-4 decades. He lost his primary. What's your sense of how that's going to impact the future Congress?
I think it's going to make the Congress even more partisan. I think that for a variety of reasons, Cantor may or may not lost. I don't want to, guess what those things are, but it is real clear that where the Tea Party had lost a number of elections, this they perceive as their turning point and winning. And I think they saw Mr. Cantor as someone who would negotiate, and that means that the message is, if you negotiate, you try to cut a deal,
What's
you're
interesting
in trouble.
about the Cantor loss is that on the same night that Mr. Cantor lost, Lindsey Graham, a senator from the state of South Carolina, one of the senators who negotiated the compromise on immigration reform, he was seen as vulnerable to a Tea Party challenge, yet he not only won, he won outright as a Republican.
Right.
So, a lot of focus is on Mr. Cantor, but couldn't one make an alternate argument based upon the success of Mr. Graham?
I think that it just reinforces Tip O'Neill's thoughts that all politics is local. As much as we like to look for ideological reasons in which that if you do not represent and stay in touch with your district and have contact, and any of the leadership, whether it's Mr. Cantor or any of the others, have tremendous responsibilities at a national level. And it puts him, especially when we're kind of at a very difficult time in terms of trying to forge, a consensus or an identity within his own party. I think it put him at risk, and I think, to me, the biggest example was not Mr. Graham or Mr. Cantor in terms of whether they represent the Tea Party or not. It's all politics is local, and he lost the confidence of some people. And plus, that district had been redistricted, and much of that district was far more rural, far different than the kinds of experiences and the goals and visions that Mr. Cantor was.
The irony is, his old district was fairly purple. His new district was much more red, and as I understand it, when the folks were drawing the lines in Virginia, they draw partisan. It's not like in California. They were trying to protect him. By giving him a more red district.
They gave him a very red district, and
too red.
That's exactly right, and I think that reflects the problems that they have. Not that we don't have problems, but the problems that they have is that they have to play to both sides, to the far right and to the more moderate.
So let's talk about immigration and immigration reform, because here in California, I was recently in Washington. I had the honor of interviewing you and several other members of the California delegation. When I spoke with Democrats or Republicans that were part of the California congressional delegation, it was hard to tell the difference on the issue of immigration. Both Democrats and Republicans seem supportive of immigration reform. But yet you don't see that with other Republicans in other states. And so, despite the desires of the California delegation for immigration reform, in light of Mr. Cantor's loss, do we expect to see any immigration reform in this session?
Highly unlikely. And I think you put your finger on it. I think that if it was up to the representatives from California, be it Democratic or Republican, comprehensive immigration reform would pass. They would have much more than just a majority. It would be passed in a bipartisan vote. Not to say that everyone would vote for it, but it would. But that I think, to me, what it says is that, in many ways, is that California is ahead of the nation, ahead of the curve. The rest of the nation will be asking for immigration reform. Even though the people, if you took a poll out there, the people would. But if you look at the makeup of the states and who runs the local state legislatures in the Midwest and in the South, you will find that does not reflect the overall polling in the nation. It will change. It will change.
It's interesting you bring this up because, as you know, in California, political boundaries are drawn by a commission as a result of of voter initiative. I
Right.
believe you have been trying to bring that principle to the national government. Am I right, sir?
Yes, I have a bill called Let the People Draw the Lines, which
Right.
was based upon the representational model. It was to take the redistricting out of the hands of the legislature and the leadership in the legislature, and to create a process by which you'd have a fair body chosen by some nonpartisan agency to select its equal number of Democrats, Republicans, and decline to states to draw the boundaries to follow prescribed kind of rules, Voting Rights Act and other rules to make sure districts are compact and contiguous, like we've done here in California and like a few other states have done, which have produced districts which are not challenged in court and districts which have more truly represent. Nothing is perfect, but it certainly takes a step forward to re-establishing trust in government by people feeling like their representatives have to pay attention to them.
Have you had any momentum behind this bill? I mean, are the Republicans who are in the majority looking at it?
Well, I think that momentum comes in a different way. I think that to expect that in a year when we can't get immigration reform, which is on our plate, or unemployment insurance extended, or the minimum wage increase, to think that something that will take away power from some of the parties will get passed is highly unlikely. However, it's time to plant the seed and to work. And I think what I found is I've been meeting with newspapers throughout the country, who all the editorial boards support thing that we've met with so far. We've been meeting with the good government types. I'll be addressing this summer the National Council of State Legislatures who want to talk about pushing this issue. So I think what you have to have is a bottoms-up approach. There are a number, I met yesterday with a Republican, there are a number of Republicans who realize this has to get done. They're a little reluctant to put their name on it at this moment. But as the momentum builds and the pressure builds from others, not just myself or Congress members, to move in this direction, I think you will see that this is an idea whose time has come.
You are a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Yes.
And I know recently you traveled to the Ukraine,
yes,
which had been in the news a tremendous amount. It seems as if it's not in the news as much because of other hot spots. But briefly, what can you tell us about the Ukraine?
Well, before, when we had spoken, it was before the May 25th election, and I said that the critical point will be the May 25th election. And at that time, I thought, when we spoke, that there was a likelihood that Poroshenko would either be in the runoff or would be elected. He subsequently has been elected, and he has taken a strong stand to unify the country, to keep the country whole.
Including the Crimea?
Not including the Crimea.
They've ceded on that.
I think that the Crimea is gone.
So what about the eastern portions of the Ukraine?
I think that there's less resistance taking place in there, and the eastern part of the Ukraine is going to need two things to maintain within the Ukraine. They're going to need some kinds of increased decision making in the government, which I think Mr. Poroshenko is in favor of doing. And I think that they're going to need, at least among a strong minority, that their Russian language, while not the official language of the Ukraine, is respected, and that there will be broadcasts in Russian as well, and done by the Ukrainians, not just done by the Soviet and the Russians.
In our final moments, events are moving quickly in Iraq. Concerned? Do you feel as if the country's on the abyss?
The country is on the abyss, as the Middle East is on the abyss. It's another example of the fighting between Sunni and Shia. The government of Iraq now is a Shia government that is not a unity government. It does not have Sunni in it. Al-Qaeda is using this as an opportunity to invade the country and to engage in this. This mischief needs to stop.
And will you come back and talk about it?
Yes.
His name is Alan Lowenthal. He's a member of the U.S. Congress. My name is Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition. It's Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by two leaders in the city of Long Beach. Gary DeLong, he is a council member in Long Beach, but he is retiring from his seat. His successor is here. Her name is Suzie Price. She won her election in a primary in April, which is unbelievable. Gary, we'll get to you in a second. I first want to talk about the victor. You won in the primary with 50% plus one in a field of how many?
There were a total of 5 candidates.
You got 50% plus one in a total of field of 5 candidates.
I believe it was 55.6.
Exactly. How did you do that, Suzie Price?
This was my first exposure into politics, and I pretty much did everything that anyone advised me to do. I didn't...
Except Gary DeLong. Whatever he said
no,
you didn't do.
Actually, Gary said, walk the neighborhoods, and the person... He told me, I met with him in November, and he said the person that works the hardest is going to be the one who's going to win this election, and I believe he was right. I mean, everybody worked hard.
Right.
But I did a little bit of everything. I did walking. I did about 40 meet and greets, so almost every night... in February and March, I was talking to groups of people and asking them to spread the word, and I think that was huge.
Gary, what do you think about Suzie's victory in the primary, 55% of the vote with 5 candidates?
Well, first of all, it's unheard of, and I think that's a testament to just how hard she worked, because she did have some strong opponents. They were working hard, but nobody worked as hard as she did. She worked her connection very well. She made a lot of new friends. I tell you, I think that's a good sign for the 3rd District. If she works half as hard governing as she did in her election, she's going to be a great representative.
And tell us about the 3rd District for our viewers statewide. It is a fairly well-heeled district. Is that fair to say?
It's the jewel of Long Beach.
Okay.
It's Naples, it's Peninsula, it's Belmont Shore, it's the beaches.
Right.
It's
a lot of industry there, or actually more business, I should say.
Certainly a commercial district in Belmont Shore.
Which I love. You've taken me there.
Yes,
it's really
indeed.
terrific. So what made you decide to run for office, Suzie? You are a deputy DA, you're a mother of 2, you're a busy person.
I am. I'm a busy person, but so are many leaders in our government, and I think that it's really important that our government represent the views of the people who actually live, breathe, and play in our parks and go to our schools. And I really was looking at the demographic of our city, and I felt that the demographic that I represent, that my mother represents, that demographic needs to be represented on the city council. I've enjoyed watching Gary's work over the last 8 years. I've enjoyed what he's done for our community. I wanted to continue doing that, and really I believe that it's important that we have leaders in government who are really of the people, who understand the needs of the community. I have a heart for the community, and I knew that with Gary leaving his office that we would need someone in the position representing the 3rd that had a heart for the community.
Before we talk about your goals, I want to look back with Gary DeLong and talk about your 8 years on the council, which I think it's fair to say were successful.
They were.
For what are you most proud over these last 8 years serving the city of Long Beach?
I'm proud of a number of things. But first of all, I'd say I'm proud that we're a far more financially stable city today, and that was working closely, obviously, with Mayor Bob Foster and others. That wasn't a single-handed adventure, but as chair of the Budget Oversight Committee, we really put the right kinds of financial policies in place to right our ship and make sure we're heading in the correct direction.
Now, arguably, you could have run again. There is a principle in Long Beach whereby you can run as a write-in if you'd like to run for a 3rd term. We know the legendary Beverly O'Neill did that when she ran for mayor a 3rd time and was successful. What made you decide not to take that path and simply voluntarily move on?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I embrace change. I mean, I think it's good, and I think you'll find that in getting to know Suzie. She brings a fresh vision. She brings a new approach. I truly think she's going to take it to the next level. I did a fine job. I'm proud of what I did, but she's going to do things differently in a very good way.
Yeah, let's talk about your future. What are your hopes, your dreams, your goals?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty loaded question.
It is. Thank you, Counselor.
But I have some goals related to the 3rd District, and then I have some citywide goals.
So let's talk about those.
But personally, I would like to develop a really good handle on the budget. I think the budget it's critical to have a good understanding of the budget. It basically dictates how we move ahead in everything that we do in the city, and understanding really how it works. And I think I have the acumen to be able to understand it and be able to work within it, having worked with city governments for years. But also, I'd like to develop an understanding of the port and its operations, because it's a critical aspect of this city that I think is not really known to a lot of people in terms of how important the port is.
What's interesting to me about Long Beach, 2nd largest city in LA County, 7th largest in the state, and yet the position as council member is part-time. you will continue to be a deputy district attorney, and yet you are expected to understand the intricacies of a city budget that is how large?
$4 billion when you put in all the assets.
Yeah, $4 billion, and a port that supports 750,000 jobs
Regionally.
Regionally? Hello.
Well, and that's true, but I actually think, I respect our charter. I value the principles of our charter, and I think, you don't need to work full time to be able to put in the full time responsibilities. You don't need to be paid full time to be able to put in the work of a full time council member. I mean, I think the work involved with being a good council member involves a lot of time, and you have to be willing to put in that time, whether you're paid for it or not. And that's just the reality. The fact that it's called a part-time position is really just a reflection of the pay, but the work is absolutely full time.
So how do you, I mean, you can pipe in, Gary.
Well, it's all about balance. But one of the things Suzie mentioned earlier is, she ran because she has a heart for the community. And I think when it's part-time, you keep your full-time job, you keep your community connections, and you bring all those experiences with you, and that's a great advantage to being a part-time political official.
So what have you been doing to kind of get up
Sure.
on the issues,
Sure.
the budget, the port,
Sure.
whatever it may be?
Sure, and I mean, if I could just add to that,
Please.
when you are part-time as a worker, you understand the needs of most of your residents who also work. So when you're talking about cutting services and service hours for various things that the city provides, you're going to think about the working individual. What time do we have the libraries open till? Because right now, there are times when I have to rush home from work to be able to squeeze in that library time with my kids. It'd be really nice to have a couple of hours on a Sunday to be able to go to the library with my kids. And I know that because I'm a working mom, and I think that's a valuable thing to bring.
So what did your constituents say to you as you were walking every weekend, I understand, throughout the 3rd District? What were their hopes and dreams and fears?
Well, their hopes and dreams and fears are things that I've been working on since April 9th. Public safety. They want to make sure that their communities are protected. They want to make sure that residential burglaries are something that are important to the city in terms of curbing those. They want to make sure that the quality of life in the city is maintained, and in the 3rd District especially is maintained at a high level. Gary has put so much energy and effort and resources into infrastructure. That's important to people in the 3rd. The issues that came up in the 3rd, I have to say, many of them are different than what I've heard in terms of citywide issues.
Which brings up a very interesting point. I mean, as you know, in other cities, there's a big debate about whether members should be elected at large or by district. The courts seem to be saying you need to be elected by district, which is what we have here in Long Beach. And so it begs the question, how do you serve the 3rd but also serve the entire city?
You educate yourself.
Yeah, I'll jump in on there as well.
Please.
Actually, I like the hybrid approach where you would have to be elected by district, and then the top 2 would go forth and be elected by the entire city. So that way it's balanced. You have to serve your constituents well to make it through a primary, but then you have to have a citywide vision.
Sure. But that being said, today in Long Beach, we do have strictly at large. There are 9.
Oh, no, strictly district.
I misspoke.
Yes.
Strictly district. There are 9 council members.
There are.
So how do you balance that, representing your district but representing the city?
Well, clearly it depends on what the issue is. You look at a council meeting. Many of the items will be district oriented, so you have your district hat on, but probably 2/3 are going to be citywide, so you need to put your citywide ad. Fire department services, police overtime and gang units, the budget, the port. So you grapple with a wide variety.
We know where you're going in the future. Where is Gary DeLong going in the future?
Gary has taken the summer off, wife, family, private business, and then I'll come out charging when my 3rd grader's back in school in September.
But do we have a sense as to whether we'll see Gary DeLong in public office? You made a valiant run for Congress in 2012. Can we expect to see you run for another office in the future?
Here's what you can expect. I learned 2 things in the last 8 years of public service. I learned that I'm kind of one of those nerds that likes constituent services. I like fixing people's building permit problem, parking ticket problem, whatever it is. I like making government work for people. The second thing I learned is I like financial oversight. I like to ask those questions. Why does it cost so much? Are there any better alternatives, et cetera? I will put those skills to work in some fashion. It might be elected, it might not.
We'll see. His name is Gary DeLong. Her name is Suzie Price. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition. Welcome back. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Stacy Mungo. She is one of the newest members of the Long Beach City Council. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tremendous victory. You ran in April. You advanced to a runoff, and in the runoff you won with about 55% of the vote. What went right?
We had an amazing grassroots campaign. We had so many volunteers that really stepped up and worked hard to make sure that we talked to every single voter. In the primary, we hit the entire district, knocked on every door of a voter. And in the runoff, we did it again in a very condensed time period.
Sure.
So we doubled our troops and knocked on doors, and I walked every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 hours a day.
What made you decide to run? You're a Long Beach native, I understand, but you're busy. You're a reserve deputy sheriff. You work as a budget director in LA County. You're on a special task force now dealing with the assessor's office. I mean, you're a busy woman.
I was a neighborhood association president three
Okay.
times. My grandparents were original homeowners where I live now.
You're kidding.
They were. And
In the home you're in or in the
No.
area you're in?
My grandparents had to sell their home when my grandma got cancer.
Okay.
But
same
their-
area?
Same area.
Got it.
Their realtor that sold their home for them was the first lady to welcome me when I bought my home in Long
God,
Beach
I love
a
it.
while ago.
Yeah.
And she said, I want you to get involved in the neighborhood. I want you to be involved. Your grandfather was a tree trimmer for the city. I want you to learn about what we're doing and what it's about. So I stepped up and I was involved in the neighborhood association, eventually became president, served 3 terms as the president. And as a neighborhood association, we were really passionate about the leadership
Right.
of the 5th district.
Right.
And so we
and
were
tell
vetting
us,
candidates.
for our statewide candidates, the 5th district, what is that essentially?
So the 5th district is the largest square footage district of the city. We cover from the 405 airport, the 405 freeway all the way to the city of Lakewood, and from the Long Beach airport all the way to Los Alamitos.
Got it. So it's a nice community, fairly well heeled, but also some challenging areas as well. Is that fair?
Yes.
So it's one thing to be a neighborhood association president. It's another thing to say, I am going to step up. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to run for office.
Yes.
That's a whole other beast. What caused you to make that leap?
My neighbors asked me to do it.
Really?
They did.
Truly?
They absolutely asked me.
Truly.
And then they said, and if you do it, we'll host your first event. And I thought about it. I met with some people. I talked it through with other people who had run and been successful and other people who had run and not been successful.
Right.
Kind of talked through what it means and how much of your life you're giving up both for the campaign and for once you're elected.
Right.
It takes 2 different sets of skills to run for office and govern. And so having a master's degree from USC and teaching there and guest lecturing about budgets and
Sure.
legislation and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
I mean, budgets. That's one of the main responsibilities of a council is to approve a budget. So, I don't mean to be a sycophant, but you're going to hit the ground running. I mean, you know budgets. You're a budget director in LA County.
Yes.
And so how much does that benefit you?
You know, it's amazing. The city of Long Beach's budget is $3.3 billion. And what we need to do is go through the revenues. And I'm already sitting down with the finance manager on a regular basis
Right.
and the city manager and making sure that I'm clear on the variances between our county budget and our city budget because
Sure.
some of those funds are very similar.
Right. And
so-
what's interesting about Long Beach is it's such a beautiful city.
It is.
It's the 2nd largest city in LA County. But as a result, it's somewhat kind of in the shadow of Los Angeles. People don't even realize what a crown jewel that Long Beach is. 500,000 people live in Long Beach. I mean, this is a
know.
real, true to life city. There's a lot going on here.
Absolutely.
So tell me about that, about trying to navigate through a city as large as Long Beach, where you don't have a full-time city council. I mean, in LA, they got a
Right.
full-time city council. You have, 4 full-time jobs other than
Right.
being a Long Beach city council member.
Well, lucky for us, there's 9 members of the council.
true, yes.
And we're already off to a great start of collaboration and cooperation. We are working with Robert Garcia, and we are going to
Who
join.
is the new mayor in Long
Yes,
Beach.
he is, Mayor-elect
Right.
Garcia. And we're joining the swearing-in ceremonies between the mayor, the citywides, and the council members. And that's
Got
never
it.
been done before.
Interesting.
And it's going to be supplemented with an inauguration. And Long Beach is going to be the city that we've always been, but with the recognition and support and press that we need to bring big businesses to Long Beach so that they know we're here, we're proud, we've got talented people who are educated and ready to work.
But you've got to be proud of the fact that while there are some businesses that are leaving California, there's one business coming to Long Beach, and that's known as Boeing. I mean, how excited are you that Seattle is losing and Long Beach is gaining?
That and Mercedes-Benz.
Right, tell us about it.
We are very lucky that they recognize that the education systems we have here in Long Beach prepare our workforce. They wouldn't come here if there weren't engineers and
Right.
all the different skill sets you need to run companies.
And what's interesting about Long Beach is that Long Beach, the various layers of public institutions seem to work well together. You have LBUSD working well with Long Beach City College, working well with Cal State Long Beach. They have that Long Beach Promise. I'm sure you know about it.
That was
and so that is kind of moving forward, marching forward. How do you intend to try to bring your skills working with various governmental agencies, Sheriff's Department, county, to make government work, the various layers and entities together?
Well, what's also unique about my run for council is I was a member of Long Beach Unified School District, and I was elected to be on the school board as a student member in the 90s. And then I went to Long Beach City College. And so these are institutions that I care deeply about. I was also a Cal State alum, not this Cal State, but another one, Cal State Fullerton.
It's okay. It's all good.
So
it's all good.
I'm just
And then a
already
master's.
there. Yes, and my master's degree is from USC, and USC already has many partnerships with the port and Long Beach State.
And we have to talk about the port. I
Yes.
mean, the port is such an important economic engine, not
Absolutely.
just for Long Beach, but for Southern California, for California and the nation.
Yes.
I mean, you know better than I. 750,000 jobs are connected to the port. I think regionally. I mean, not just regionally. Forget what's happening. So talk to me about the city council and the role the council plays in the port, because the port it's owned by the city. Is that right? Did I say that right?
The port and the city have an interesting relationship,
Okay.
but we appoint the members of the commission.
Sure.
And so on Monday, 3 of the new council-elects, along with the commissioners, are going to be going on a tour to talk about what we have now, where we want to grow, what we want to make sure to protect the quality of life for our residents.
Right.
We don't want to just fill our 710 freeway with trucks.
Sure.
But a container from the port hits every single congressional district in the entire country. I mean, our span and reach is so far and wide, and we need to make sure we use all the tools, rail, everything, to make sure that the quality of life for neighbors isn't impacted.
And it's tricky because, in the last decade, I think there was a lot of effort to green both the LA and Long Beach port. And that seems to have gone well, but there are still health challenges, and I'm sure that you'll be addressing those. At the same time, there are threats from other ports.
Yeah.
Panama. We know they're revitalizing their port. We have the Middle Harbor project here in Long Beach, which is important.
Amazing.
But how do you kind of balance the desire to increase the capacity of the port, Middle Harbor project, with the desire not to keep the 710 filled with trucks and
of course,
soot spewing through the city?
There are lots of individuals that are the stakeholders, and we need to make sure all the stakeholders are at the table. Ideas from the Harbor Trucking Association may include things like keeping the port open 24 hours so trucks are on the road when people aren't on the road, to reduce those kinds of issues. There are other ideas that have come to the table related to the way that we transport things in that area off the Middle Harbor.
Sure.
There's lots of creative ways that we can make sure that the quality of life stays the same. And Long Beach is the leader in green. And we also, while being the leader in green, we currently, at the dock right now, have the largest the largest boat that's ever been in the Port of Long Beach. It came in last night.
I want to hear about do you know the name, or what is it, or what's on it? Do you know?
It's a Costco truck, and when I say Costco, I don't mean Costco, the place that you go to buy your groceries. But it's one of the bigger companies, and they came in yesterday.
From China, presumably?
Yes, and hopefully they stop at some places along the way.
Whatever, be that as it may.
And that was all the talk last night at the chamber event. So hopefully we'll see if they're going to finish unloading before we get there on Monday.
I want to get a sense from you how, given that in Long Beach you're elected by district, how do you represent the interests of your district while at the same time representing the interests of the city?
Well, I think that goes back to what you talked about earlier with regard to we don't want to be LA's little kid sister. And so all of our meetings already are talking about what are we going to do about the Belmont pool? How do we ensure that we are a nationally recognized pool where Olympians come to enjoy great fitness opportunities and things like that? And we need to talk about those citywide issues. And luckily, on the 5th District side of things, I've been involved in the neighborhood associations for a very long time. I've been close with 3 of our last 3 commanders. So our public safety, we have a baseline that we can work towards.
It's a pretty safe area.
It is a pretty safe area. We still need to address property crime.
I understand.
No one wants to be violated, and no one wants people coming into their homes, and we need to make
you're
sure
a deputy sheriff, so you'll keep us safe. Her name is Stacy Mungo. She is one of the newest members of the Long Beach City Council. We congratulate you, of course, on a tremendous victory. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.